What is up, guys? Andy here from the Residents of Evil. Hope you're all doing well. Welcome to the Residents of Evil podcast presented by G Fuel. It is my honor and privilege to present you our guest at this time, Craig BURNATOWSKI, the new Albert Wesker. How are you doing, sir?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. Welcome to Toronto.
How has life been? I know it's been a chaotic one since the launch of Resident Evil 4. Rave reviews across the board, as you well know. How's life been?
Different. Yeah, I've worked on games before, but none of them have had the impact this one has had. It's a hard secret to keep for 2 years, that's for sure. And my social media is definitely in a different state than it was 4 months ago. So I've had to lock things down in a way I didn't expect.
You've certainly been putting the hours in on Resident Evil 4. I think you actually put up an Instagram post saying you've got a platinum, which I've not even achieved yet. So the Albert Wesker is officially a better Resident Evil 4 gamer than me.
Well, we had to. I knew we were doing a live stream with the whole cast, so Nick had organized a live stream, which was, I believe it was like a week and a half or 2 weeks after the game came out. So my goal was to have the platinum before that happened. So, yeah, I ran through it as fast as I could. I booked off work.
How long did it take you to achieve that?
About a week. Now, the one thing I haven't done yet is I don't have the cat ears, which is you have to do new game mode with, what is it? You have to do a brand new game on the hardest difficulty. So I've beat the hardest difficulty on New Game Plus, but not New Game. So I did the one trophy you could do through mercenary mode, so it's a little bit of a cheat, but yeah.
I suppose from our point of view, we want to kind of take it back. Let's take it back a step. Let's go from when you were told you were going to be Albert Wesker. Can you talk us through kind of how you got to the dance with Albert Wesker and Resident Evil 4 Remake?
I saw an audition posting online. I mean, I'm part of a lot. Most of the auditions I get are from my agent, but I saw a posting that went live that was very vague. It said they were looking for a villain in a video game, and that's about all they said. And I messaged my agent and I said, "Hey, did you see this? Can you submit me for this?" And he goes, "Oh, don't worry, I already saw that. I already submitted you." And then I auditioned for a game, and then I had a callback for a game, and then they flew me to Vancouver after I booked this game. And when I got there, I said, "Can you guys tell me what this is now?" And they said, "Yes, it's Resident Evil." And I said, "Oh, and you're playing Albert Wesker?" And I said, "Oh." So yeah, I knew exactly what that meant when they told me. I knew how big a deal it was when they told me, but yeah, I think I would have been a lot more stressed out if I had known sooner.
So from when you read those scripts, those the audition scripts, to when you found out about Albert Wesker and you started working on the role, was there much change in that character from where you were to where it then become?
No, I was doing things in the audition that they liked, and when I got there, I was like, should I keep going like this? Like they booked me for a reason. So yeah, it's exactly how I did it in the first audition.
Because it's what, again, as you can appreciate, with a long-standing series like Resident Evil, there's so many. We asked the same question to Nick. There's always so many. There's always so many renditions of these characters. So it's an interesting one with you, because I suppose you went into the role not really knowing who the character was going to be. So it's not like you said, "Well, they did this, and I wanted to take it in this direction." Could you elaborate on your thought process behind that?
I mean, yeah, basically, like working for video games or movies or TV shows, there's so much NDA stuff wrapped around it. So a lot of the times projects have code names, scripts are fake. The companies know what they're looking for, but they can't really tell you how to give it to them. They're just trying to give actors enough so that they make choices that they're hoping to see. So it's a really interesting, like, the Capcom know what they're doing. They have an idea. I've worked with them in the past, and it's a really exciting room to be in, because there's a lot of people that really care about this franchise that are working on it. And as an actor, I don't really get to. I'm not running the ship when there's hundreds of people that have been working on this game before I step into the room. You know what I mean? So it's a really fun thing to be a part of, and it's a great group to put my trust into, basically.
And it definitely seems more magical in a sense, where your little inklings of perception of what this character might consist of doesn't necessarily align with the original director's intent, but it offers some new spice. It sort of offers a new iteration of the flavor of the character that we have never seen before. And I think with this iteration, it's safe to say that that kind of magic was very much preserved, of just very authentic, original direction with the voicing rather than something more derivative. So I think that's really nice.
I mean, I am so excited to be part of this game. I absolutely loved it. I've been the remakes. I've been so much fun. And as we spoke about earlier, I've been a fan of this franchise since it started. I had the first game when it came out.
Well, I suppose works out to be quite a nice segue. Let's go back to where it began. It's not always we get an opportunity that one of the voice actors is a Resident Evil fan going into it. So let's go back to the beginning. What did you think of the original 1996 Resident Evil?
I had so much fun. I was in acting school when it came out, and actually maybe it was just after it came out, but I do remember playing it for the first time with my acting friends. And all we could do was when voice acting had started coming into games, and we just wanted to do that kind of stuff. And we would all be copying the lines and stuff like that, which in the first one were memorable. Wesker, Jill, what happened to Jill and Wesker? and then I got to work on Resident Evil Outbreak, which was on PlayStation 2. And so I did 6 months of motion capture on that game. And that game I auditioned for a voice role. And back then, if I remember correctly, because that was quite some time ago, I don't think it was covered in the same kind of NDA. I think I knew it was Resident Evil auditioning for it. And a woman that was with my agency at the time was doing the casting for it, who turned out to be Allison Court, who worked as Claire. And so she had me come in and read a role, and then I didn't get it because I was really green at the time. And they ended up bringing me in for motion capture, and it was a bunch of people sitting around in tights all day with ping pong balls attached to us, and they just kept calling me back. So it would be one full day of doing this, and I didn't know if it would happen again, and then 4 days in a week doing it, and we'd do that for 3 weeks while we did an episode of the game. And then a couple months later, I'd get a call and be like, do you want to come work on this again? Yes I do. And then after I'd done several months of motion capture, I ended up doing a small voice in it. And I'm pretty sure his name was Ben, but it's been a long time.
Ben
And
Bertolucci?
I think so. I'd have to play the game to hear it, but my voice is quite different than it was like 15 years ago.
Definitely.
Yeah, I've been screaming in a lot of bands since then, so my voice has gotten a little bit deeper.
A little bit miles on the clock.
Yeah. I also did.
Oh, go ahead. No. After you.
I did all the Jeep commercials in Canada for like 4 years, so I'd have to talk like this.
ASMR
on radio and television.
It's really fascinating. When you were describing the story of auditioning for the role of Wesker, you described it as, we have a villain part to play. And I was actually just taking a gander I was looking around at your demo reel. I think this was your 2016, and it was really fascinating. There was a character, a couple, one in particular, who was on the History Channel, and he was actually a psychotic, sort of maniacal man who wanted a woman to undress in a very particular way, and he had a very psychotic aura. And I was wondering if you had any sort of natural proclivity, any sort of innate inclination towards not that in particular, but towards villainous, sort of psychotic characters and personalities.
I've been shaving my head for 20 years,
Okay.
and I tend to play cops and thugs and bad guys, and I love it. It's a lot of fun. I think I know what role you're talking about on the demo reel, and that was so I was working on a game for several years, and the guy was a 1,300-year-old necromancer.
Okay.
So he had all the confidence in the world, and he wasn't afraid of anybody. So it was a really fun thing to play because it didn't have to be over the top, and it didn't have to be like mean and crazy, because he's so confident in it that he could just relax and
Mm.
that was intimidating, right? So yeah, that a lot of the stuff on the demo reel is from actual games or from recordings that we did as demos for a game that I was working on.
Right. And that is really fascinating to me because we often have in this franchise, we have villains that are more composed, they're cool, they're calculated, and we have villains that sort of have a transformation. Looking at, say, for example, Code Veronica or RE5 Wesker that are a little bit more animated and a little bit more comic bookish. But I think there's a lot of intimidation in a villain who is very calculated, calm, composed, who lets you in on just a hint of the anger and of the um sort of strength in his voice. And that like if you make me angry, I'm gonna get somewhere really, really scary, and you're not gonna
And tell
see that.
and tell you my entire plan.
Oh yeah, yeah. And if you make me tell you my plan, things are gonna get real bad real fast. And I think that that sort of reserved, um, non-obvious, very inconspicuous intimidation factor, I think that was something really refreshing about this iteration of Wesker. I thought it was scarier because it was less animated in a sense.
Yeah, it was really fun to do. It was um, getting to work with Lily and Nick, and there were a couple other actors that were there too that I did some motion capture for a couple other scenes as well, which I don't remember what they were now because I didn't get to keep any of the scripts or anything like that. And go in and work on it, and then it's gone. Um, but yeah, it's what a cool and exciting and dark way to tell this story. Like playing this game is just so much fun. I must have played through it 6 times within a week.
It's
Oh,
a
yeah.
long game as well, and I always felt like this might slightly be out the scope of the conversation, but I almost feel like you always get to that part in the game, especially when you've replayed it and you're like, oh, I'm at this part. It's going to be a drag until I get through it. I didn't feel like there was a section in RE4 Remake that was like that.
There's nothing I would want to skip. Yeah, every single section and chapter of it is great. Yeah, big fan. Absolutely big fan.
Which is interesting because you do often hear, and again, I appreciate it might be not necessarily games, but it could be movies. Actors might not want to watch their own material, so to have an actor want to play their own game over and over, I think is quite interesting, actually.
Yeah, and then I mean, like, I probably didn't have to worry about that self-conscious stuff because I'm only in it at the end, really. So
The Marvel post-credit
it's
scene.
playing, yeah, it's playing Nick's game. I get Nick in my ear the whole time. Yeah.
We're going to cover a couple of super chats that have just come in here. So, Arab Pikachu with the $2 super chat. Thank you very much. Craig for the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Okay. Thank you very much for that, Arab Pikachu. Appreciate you. Then we have a $4.99 super chat from King Grogu SW Rojas. who says, "Hello, Mr. Andy, Miss Beg, Mr. Craig. What do you think Wesker's favourite macaroon would be? What do you think?" Okay, well, we'll cover the first part of the question. Yeah. So we'll cover the first section here. Thank you again for the super chat. What would Wesker's favourite macaroon be?
Oh, I bet it'd be something weird, something without something without any sugar in it. Just be dry and maybe salty. I don't know.
Yeah, it definitely has a high salt diet for sure. We got another super chat coming in from Al. Oh, sorry, were you gonna go on the back of that?
I missed the end of that. Was there another question on there?
Yeah, it was a comparison to other Wesker actors.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll again, thank you very much for the super chat. That is very appreciated. Alan Lane coming in with the £5 super chat. That's really appreciated. We won't be talking about comparisons to other voice actors. We believe that's outside of the scope of the interview today. But thank you very much for the super chat. That is very, very appreciated. So you were in Resident Evil Outbreak. Tell us about that, please.
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, motion capture is very, very different now than it was back then. Like right now, I mean, if anybody has seen the behind the scenes for Avatar, I mean, it's not that advanced doing here, but it's very similar. It's the whole suit with all the dots, full helmet with cameras. And I've now worked for a couple different companies that have the head mounted displays or the head mounted cameras, and some of them are different. Like some of them it's just one camera, some of them they're 3 cameras, and there's microphones, so you are recording the voice and the face and the movement all at the same time. When I did Resident Evil Outbreak, they would be recording the lines separately. All the actors would be in the studio at a different time. They wouldn't be doing the scenes together. They would record the voices, they'd edit them together, and then we would get in a room and they'd play it over the sound system and we'd act it out like puppets. So it's a much more disjointed way to do it, but that was where the technology was. And now this is why it looks like 2 people in a room talking together, relating together, and looking each other in the eyes, because you actually can do that now. It's the advancements in technology are really, really cool for gaming.
So if we go on the back of that, because again, this is you are a crossover actor. This wouldn't be possible 20, 25, 30 years ago. So how do you compare doing say voice and motion capture to doing a traditional acting role?
I mean, acting on film and TV and in video games is they all have their inherent difficulties, because first of all, you've got a room full of people that are all doing different things and adjusting you in different ways. You've got to clear that out of your mind. But now we're actually getting to relate to actors and say the lines together and listen to them, because that's the most important thing. When I was working on a game for several years where I was directing it, and one of the big things that I learned was when you direct actors you give them a script and you get them to say the line in the coolest way that they can, and then you take all of the coolest readings of all the lines in the scene and then you put them together. It doesn't work, because it doesn't sound like 2 people talking together. It sounds like 2 people competing for who sounds the coolest, and no one's listening to each other. And I found out that sometimes lines need to be thrown away, because with putting these disjointed lines of 2 people not speaking together in a way to make it sound like they are actually speaking. That experience, I think, really helped me with auditions and working on games moving forward. But that seeing what it was like to be a director is incredibly helpful for actors. I don't know if I might have derailed my train of thought there, but yeah.
Well, that again, one of the various roles that you've undertaken, you've also been a director as well. So how does that compare and contrast to actually being in the role and directing others?
It's infinitely useful. The stress of going into an audition when you're younger and like walking into a room and not really realizing that you're one of many people that are doing this, and to be able to walk in and just be a normal person in front of a casting director is so much more relaxing. Like what I would see actors come in that just had way too much energy and were obviously like just trying to be noticed, and I was like, okay, that's not someone I want to work with. So just trying to be able to relate to a casting director, and also the world of auditioning is very different now since the pandemic, because almost everything is self tapes. So we do have Zoom auditions sometimes, but a lot of it is self tape. So it's harder to figure out what an actor is going to be like to work with when you don't have them in the room. So once again, I've jumped away from what we were talking about, but yeah, being a director and a casting director is very useful for as an actor as well, for sure.
That's something I appreciate. The game was being developed during the pandemic, and we will absolutely go into that because I think it's such a fascinating concept, creating a game during a pandemic. We're just going to cover a couple more subscriptions, memberships, etc. in the chat just before we jump onto that. So King Rojas, member for 15 months, Row Squad Recruit. Thank you very much. He says salty caramel macaroon for Wesker. Wesker is salty. Agreed. Thank you very much, King Grogas. Appreciate it. Ragemere coming in with the gifted subscription. That is very much appreciated. Thank you for growing the row. And Betsy coming in with the member for 11 months to the Bravo team. Bravo team already. Holy smokes. Amazing 11 months to be with the row. Woohoo. Here's to many more indeed. Thank you very much for supporting the Residents of Evil. But back to shooting a game during a pandemic. What was that like? Because when I spoke to Nick, he mentioned that it might not have even been possible to do the mocap. It was nearly not possible to do the mocap because of the constraints of what was going on in the world. What was the impact for you, and what was it like shooting a game during the pandemic?
Well, I was doing Jeep commercials when the pandemic hit. So I was still going into studios, and like I was in my apartment alone for the first several months, but every month or so I would go to a recording studio, and I'd pretty much walk there, masks on, everything would be wiped down, and then they would leave, and the engineers would not be anywhere near me. The directors were calling in from home. And then I shot several TV shows during the pandemic, and it was the same thing. It was like everybody was scared. We were getting tested 3 times a week, wearing masks. We would be on. I did an episode of Mayday, which is a show about reenacting air disasters. And I remember we were sitting in the plane. Everybody had masks on, and they'd call action. We'd take masks off, do the scene, masks back on immediately.
Wow.
And yeah, and then everything had to be well ventilated, and all auditions went to self tapes. And then Resident Evil, I suppose, was 2021. It was also the first callback I had in a studio. So I did this self tape from home, and then they had me come into a casting studio, which is around the corner from my apartment, which is cool. But it was just a sea of black squares with their cameras turned off. So I could tell that there were a lot of people watching. No idea who they were. None. And it was I guess they were relating to the guy in the room what they wanted the casting director to tell me. But yeah, and all masked up. I took a flight over to Vancouver. I remember there is a picture on Instagram of I don't know what I'm doing. I had masks on, and I was like, I'm flying to Vancouver. I don't know what for. I'll tell you when I can.
Wow.
But yeah, Nick would know a lot more about that than me, because he was working on it for well before I got there. So I got there and the group had already been established. You know, they Steve, who's the director, and him were good friends at that point. Apparently they were having all these barbecues with the cast, and Nick would host parties, but I wasn't there long enough to do that kind of stuff. So I got to walk in for a short amount of time and be like a part of a really, really exciting group, and then put a mask on.
Right. That sounds, that actually reminds me, about the shooting Jeep commercials, using a sort of promo tone of voice and getting into that mindset. There was actually a course that I tagged along to, where, I forget the actor's name, it was held by Strawberry Hill Music, and he was giving some insight into how promos are actually shot, and it was a very stressful process. I don't know how it compares to yours, but, he would have to be within his sound booth for hours at a time, and it would be difficult to leave the house to get food or anything because he might get called for an audition, and if he got called for a part, there's a small circle of, like a few hundred people across the globe that were capable of doing this very particular voice for various promos. It could be for, like, monster truck racing, it could
So
be for
you're
Mhm.
talking about someone that works for like a radio station, right? And they're the voice of that station,
That's correct.
basically.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. I've got a friend who I actually cast in a game, but he is exactly like that. He's the voice of one radio station, and he does almost every ad on it. He does every promo. He introduces almost every song that's there. And I don't know how many hours he must put into doing this, but it's nuts, absolutely nuts.
Mhm.
I built a recording, a vocal booth just before the pandemic. Um, no, I guess it was during the pandemic. I built a vocal booth because we would my casting agency had a vocal booth that we could do auditions in, and also had a self tape room. So all of my auditions before the pandemic, we would go in there and do it. Um, but then I had to do it all myself,
Mm.
and yeah, I can't imagine what it would be like to be the one voice of something. That must be incredibly stressful.
And then, building off of that a little bit, I was going to ask, how does developing that promo style of voice for, say, something like the Jeep commercials, building that, and then also your voice as a musician, all of that range, and as well as playing the parts of various characters across film, video games. Um, how do you sort of structure your approach to maybe using one of those to complement another, or maybe dividing them from one another?
um, I mean, all of those experiences all kind of feed into each other, and definitely singing in rock bands has been really helpful. I just got to make sure the screen is on the right place.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's
so
very
I can
important.
do that.
There we go. It's back. Um, Screaming in rock bands has been very useful for video games because um, a lot of video game recording is really intense. It's I mean, what I got to do was the one of the characters that's just a voice talking to other people, but there's dozens of characters in action games that all they do is yell, "There he is!" and
Mm,
scream and get shot and get stabbed and get legs taken off and are set on fire. So even auditions, sometimes they're like, "Can you scream like you're on fire for 30 seconds?" Uh huh. Yep. So singing in a rock band has made it so that I don't really lose my voice now for screaming like I'm on fire for 30 seconds.
and
see
it
that's not, sorry, Becky, but that's not uncommon, because when they did the Dead by Daylight Resident Evil DLC, they they used a company called the Monster Factory for the voiceovers for Leon, Claire, etc., and they were screamo music. So
That's cool.
it
Yeah.
just goes to show you how versatile kind of heavy metal is, that you get them real screeches and and all of that sort of thing. And as I said, they literally contracted this company for that reason, because they knew they were like heavy metal artists,
And I get to introduce the knights at medieval times. I'm in the show at medieval times, so I get to every day I get to scream the Yellow Knight. I get to scream my head off. It's like, yeah.
That's so awesome.
All those things help each other.
That's so cool. I've been to that many times as a kid. I never had any insight into like the sort of process of putting it together, but yeah, it is a treat, that thing. That is like one of my favorite attractions like ever.
Yeah. It's a really fun job. Yeah.
So bringing it back round to Resident Evil, as you've kind of gone through the series, do you have, outside of Resident Evil 4, of course, do you have like a memory from Resident Evil that really sticks in your memory that you'd like to discuss?
I mean, it's not something I worked on, but I played Resident Evil 7 for the first time in VR. I didn't play it flat screen first. And I think it took me 6 months to finish that game because I was terrified. I remember I put on the VR, and I think this was right after I got PSVR 1. And I believe like everybody was saying that Resident Evil 7 was the best game to get on it. So I got it. And at the time, I was not really good with horror games, especially first person. And then I remember just walking up to the house, and you walk in the door and it's pitch black, and I turned it off. And I think it took me a week to turn it back on, but just fighting the mold monsters in the basement, I could do about 10 minutes of it, and then my heart was beating so fast I would have to pause it. I didn't find 8 as terrifying.
No.
It took me a while to get past the wolves at the beginning of the game, because I didn't actually understand what the mechanic was. I didn't realize I was just supposed to survive for a while. So I would be like, how many of these things am I supposed to kill? And then I would die. And I think it took me like 6 tries to get through it, but because I didn't really understand that you were just supposed to live long enough and then a cutscene would happen. But yeah, I think I can't wait for I know it's been announced, so I can say that, but the first person PSVR 2 version of Resident Evil 4, that's when I'm going to play through the game again for sure. And if they put another trophy on them, then I'll make sure I play it enough to get that.
Yeah, of course. Well, they do have kind of a blueprint for that Resident Evil 4 VR with the MetaQuest VR version, which is exceptional. So if it's anything like that version, I mean, I did see Resident Evil 8 VR, and that actually looked like it carried a lot of the features over from that MetaQuest 2 version. So yeah, I've got high hopes for
and
for
so
that.
8 had a couple different mechanics, right? So 8 would have the knife that you had that you'd throw, which was different. And from looking at the trailers for Resident Evil 4, it looks like you'll be able to hold your gun in one hand and hold the knife and parry in the other hand. So I mean, I can understand why it takes so long, because they probably have to redo all of the encounters. They have to redo all the balancing for how things are. That was the one thing I was disappointed on, is that you couldn't get the trophy. I played through 8 in VR for the first time and realized that I wasn't getting any trophies, and that was not good for my OCD.
Oh, you're joking? What, you don't get any? They say
no, because the game is totally different. So there's a different series of unlockables. All of the what are they? The goat statues are there, so you can get the goat statues, and that unlocks things in the game. But you can't actually do any of the trophies. So I played it through in VR first, and then went back to.
Oh,
I think I still have a couple trophies left in 8. I haven't finished that one yet.
Yeah, I need to. I don't know. I just felt with Resident Evil 8, 7 to a certain extent. There isn't a hunger inside me to go back. Like, I played them once and they were fantastic games. There's not hunger to go back and keep replaying it like I have done with like RE4 and 2 and 3, etc.
I would agree, but I think it's more that Resident Evil 4 is just so replayable, and it's so much fun to play through. I don't think that it's a fault of the other games. I just think that this one is it's just such a fun action game to play all the way through.
It's definitely like the most.
Then you get the armor for Ashley, and then she's invincible. It's just so much fun. I'm a big fan.
So obviously, if we take the pesky Wesky hat off, and we put on the Craig, the PS5 gamer hat, what has been your favourite parts of Resident Evil 4 that you're happy to discuss? As playing the game, of
okay,
course.
So I will say that 4 was one of the ones that came out at a time in my life where I wasn't playing a lot of games. So I hadn't played the game, and which meant that it was brand new for me when I played it through when it came out. And I didn't want to spoil it, so I didn't look at anything else. And I got to say that the jet ski thing, I was just giggling the whole time when that happened. I was not expecting the escape on jet ski at the end. The chainsaw fights were the unnecessary backflip.
Yeah,
there's
I love that.
There's so many moments in the game that just put like this huge smile on my face, and I was like, this is really cool. This is really fun.
It's such, I keep saying this, it's such a long game as well. Like, I think my first playthrough must have been like 15 hours, and I'm just enjoying it, you know?
I also, the first time I play a game, I try not to use any kind of walkthroughs, and I try to find as many of the things as I can.
Mhm.
So I end up playing it really slow. Like after I knew how the game worked, I was a lot faster, and I didn't watch every cutscene over and over again.
So obviously, you bring up Nick Apostolidis quite a bit. What was it like working with the main man?
I mean, you know him, you've met him. He's one of the nicest, most generous guys I've met. He's been really great for me for navigating being a public. I have worked on a lot of things in the past. I've had a couple games where they were kind of a big deal, but this is much bigger. There's a huge and devout Resident Evil fan base, and he's been really great at figuring out how to make the most out of this experience, really. So I'd like to thank him for that. Yeah, he's awesome.
Well, because I suppose in a way you've been kind of thrusted into the community a little bit. What has been your experience so far since the release of Resident Evil 4 in the community?
So I mean, I had to keep the secret for 2 years, basically. So I had already been watching the commentary. I knew about fans' excitement for it. What I didn't know until the game came out was how great all the creators are, because I wasn't speaking to them. There's a couple people that have reached out that Nick has introduced me to that have just been really phenomenal and supportive people. So that's the one really cool thing about getting to do this, is that I get to work with people like you and meet people with you like you guys and talk with you guys online. And it's a really great community that you guys have.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, I'd like to say it's kind of really picked up steam since the pandemic, because, you know, everyone, for the most part, during that period will kind of, you know, waiting, you know, sitting around watching streams, watching this content. So we have kind of developed these really like strong, you know, we've all got something in common. Like when I was a kid, like no one really played Resident Evil. So, oh, go on, you're going to say something?
I can do one more. When I was a kid, it wasn't cool to be a video gamer. Like, I didn't tell anybody at school. My brother and I had a Nintendo, and we had an Atari 2600 when we were kids, but it wasn't cool to play video games. So we didn't tell anybody. It was like the secret thing, and it wasn't, you know, cool kids don't have them. And I remember my younger cousin getting games and talking about it openly, and I was like, what? You're allowed to talk about it now? That's different. That's different.
Well, why do you think that? Is it just because it was a new medium and people weren't?
I don't know. I mean, like, it's not the same stigma to be a nerd now that it was back then. Like, being a nerd wasn't, like, Revenge of the Nerds were movies that were out where it just wasn't cool, you know. And we didn't have the internet to form communities like this, right? So there was no way to find out how many people were interested in the same things that you were interested in.
That's definitely
And
true. This,
yeah, now you can find people that like the same thing that you like.
oh yeah, this wave of like just cultural transformation, the internet just putting people together that have this niche interest, and suddenly it's not a niche anymore. It becomes this like massive, like $1 billion industry.
I just saw someone's comment, "Mom,
Uh-huh.
dad, I'm a gamer now." Coming out to your parents.
Yeah.
So good.
But yeah, you're right. I mean, the internet has really, aside from society, it's changed every facet, how we earn livings, how we communicate with people, how we build communities. But even when I was a kid, like in the early 2000s, like you know, no one really played Resident Evil, like in my age group. So to have this budding community around us, all with that common interest and love for the series that I do, is really wholesome. And I'm hoping that that has been reflected now that you've kind of joined the community.
Yeah, really. How long have you guys been doing this?
Like late 2020, and the thing was that like I also similar story, honestly. I didn't really have a Resident Evil friend group. I was like sort of the loner in terms of that, but I had a group of gamers, and meeting a community of really passionate fans who were the biggest nerds about everything, just like me, about like the novels, the exclusive sort of material that tells the story outside of the games, even.
Hmm.
Finding that close of a connection is extremely particular, and it can be very difficult to find someone in that tiny sub niche that shares that much of a passion with you. And I think that was essentially the time when I started like meeting people online, meeting Andy, JJ, other creators. And then I sort of learned that all of this really nice interaction with voice actors, all of the creative minds behind these titles that we love so much, and we dissect all the time, and we really try to pick apart for all of their meaning, try to like maximize the meaning in a story, because this one in particular has so much. It has so much in terms of rich influences as a rock bed foundation for all the stories, the villains. It has folklore that is essentially relevant to the region that it takes place in, and um, every bit of it that sparked that initial interest from the original Resident Evil 4 has been revived and resurrected and, dialed up so faithfully, and in some ways even done up. So it's just been like a nice journey to meet people like Andy and like yourself, and share that love.
Yeah, I find it really fascinating too that it's neat that to meet people that consume media in a very different way, because um, I've recently gotten into a couple of YouTube channels that rip apart and dissect shows that I like to watch, and I realized that I watch it with a completely different lens, because I'm always looking at how relationships are working and how connections are, and I find that I'll miss foreshadowing and I'll miss thematic stuff that these creators like you guys pick up on. And there's a couple creators that have posted these things. I'm like, oh, that's why that was happening. Right. I wasn't focusing on that. I was focusing on something very different. But
Mhm.
yeah, people all find different greatness in it, which is cool.
100%. And actually, we did a review of Resident Evil 4 remake as like the group of the Residents of Evil, excuse me. All us creators, we all sat down, had a little bit of a round table on Resident Evil 4 remake. I gave my points. Then I listened to Beggy's points, and I was like, man, was I even playing the same game? I feel like I've
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
missed
that's
like
really cool how
entire
that
chunks.
happens. Yeah, yeah, for
But
sure.
that is the true in my opinion, that is the true beauty of Resident Evil is its nuance, is that it's almost kind of like Star Wars, where you kind of had like an original trilogy, then you had an action trilogy, and then there's another trilogy. Like they're all different. So you've almost got these like micro pockets of different fandoms. Then you've got fans of the films who
Yep.
have only ever watched the films. It's amazing actually, because it's been around for so long.
But it's also you realize that if there are that many people that can enjoy it in different ways, then there must have been that many people working on it that were all focusing on
Mm.
the creative team behind it. They were nailing so many different aspects of it, which is really cool to be a part of. Yeah, I bought the collector's edition, so I've got Nick beside me.
Yeah, of course, of course. You have a very, very simplistic setup as well. I love it. Like a
Well,
nice minimalist.
I did clean a couple things away because I knew that this was going to be online. So usually I've got my computer here because I do video editing and audio editing too. So I've got a bit more set up usually, but yeah, I keep it pretty clean.
So what else have you been playing recently? I know you said you've obviously been doing a lot of Resident Evil 4, but is there anything else that's been kind of?
Yes. Right now I'm playing through what is it? Alan Wake, because Control was one of my favorite games during the pandemic. I absolutely love that. And then I got into the wider universe of it. I hadn't played Alan Wake, and it just went on sale on PlayStation. And I saw that the remake, the sequel is coming out. So I'm playing through that right now. I think I'm on the last chapter right now.
Oh, and your thoughts so far?
I mean, it's a great story, and but you can tell it's an older game. It's not, and it's not a remake. It's a remaster, right? So it's the
That's right,
same.
yeah.
It's the same gameplay as it was years ago, which is super fun. But I mean, games have gotten to a point where, like the Resident Evil 4 remake and like The Last of Us, where it's just on a completely different level. I mean, when I was playing through the God of War 2018,
Mhm.
I think that was right when I got back into games again. I was dating someone that wasn't into games, so I wasn't playing them a lot. But when I sat down and saw what level things had gotten to with God of War and with The Last of Us, and I saw the way that you could tell a story now, and wow, is it ever different than when I was playing Asteroids as a kid? It's
Mhm.
it's such an exciting media because you can get people to feel connected to a story in video games that you can't really achieve in movies and film. You can get people attached to these characters because of the way that you get them to sit right where they are, I mean, and think how they're thinking. So the things that The Last of Us and The Last of Us 2 do is really, really spectacular.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I get excited about video games.
That's good, and it has been nice seeing that evolution over time. And actually, this harkens back to Resident Evil 1, actually, where it was like, oh, it's not just who's getting the highest score in an arcade. No, this is a real horror film playing out in front, and you are in control. The game has changed. It's not like how it used to be anymore, and
Yeah.
it continues to innovate to this day. Sorry, Becky, you were going to say something.
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna add that, this is one medium that always asks for your involvement, to engage you directly, to ask you to make decisions. Do I wanna save this person or that person? Do I wanna save Zoe
Hmm.
or Mia? Do I wanna
Yep.
actually, do I wanna go back and make this scenario choice in Resident Evil 3 and end up in a different spot, For years and years, this has been that one medium that doesn't simply play out like you would read a book or watch a movie. This is something that you feel like you are responsible for your decisions. You have player agency that then comes back to bite you or to reward you. And all of those different little scenarios, it really creates an experience that can be played and experienced many different times, and you take away something new every time, and I think that is something with Capcom games, with Resident Evil, with writing it from a very simple scenario route into a larger franchise and increasing that, thematic coherence between games. To quote, Alex and Neil in his unofficial history of Resident Evil, the amount of work that the team has actually taken to contribute to the new continuity as opposed to the older one, and the older one as well. But there's all sorts of little details now. The parasite, the concept of Las Plagas and Any Alpha stretching across multiple entries, possibly setting up for another entry with those. And with the bioterrorists and all of these motives actually tying together, there's these larger than life tales that may as well be a novel. They may as well they could exist as a movie and hit just as hard, but because they're a game, they have that unique allure of we have a say in the matter, and we can actually
It's that additional
interact.
dimension, isn't it?
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
totally agree. And also like playing through these games, the 7 and 8, there was so much more story that it made me want to find creators who would show me what the connections are, because I knew there was dozens of things that I had missed. And so, finding people that put in the work is rewarding in itself.
Agreed. Well, we're going to open up this next segment. What we did before we went live today, we asked the members of the Residents of Evil, as part of the perks. We just say, give us a question that you want to ask Mr. Craig Burnatowski. I won't be able to bring it up on screen because it is in text file. Some of them, I appreciate, might have already been asked.
Okay.
So we'll just rattle through them as we can. So Cute Fluff 8,
Cool.
Thank you very much. Starting off going, thank you, Craig, for hanging out with Resident Evil fans. Question: how do you get into the mind of a villain like Wesker? Do they know they're villains?
Oh, well, that's tough. That's tough with Wesker. Usually, no villains. I think the strongest villains are the heroes in their own story. I think that's really interesting. However, Wesker has an aspect of relishing in the fact that he's a villain. So I think that there's that, which is a different thing to play than just playing a psychopath, because he's he's a sociopath. He's nuts, but he's also charming. Yeah, it's a hard thing to get into the mind of. I'd say.
And that's when I would think you've really constructed this really compelling villain that is as attractive to the hero to root for. If you find people rooting for your villain, it says something about how much allure they have, how much charisma they have. And Wesker is a character since even like the early novels, the earlier entries of the franchise before RE4 and RE5 Wesker. Even then, he was very much just consumed by avarice. He was very greedy and entitled, and he would relish in the fact that, oh, I have some time now because the other Stars members are opening up the locks for me. And he debates on taking a nap in one of the scenes. That's how much he feels like he is entitled to his reward, is that he doesn't even push on and finish the job. He kind of plays with his food because he just knows he's that good. So
yeah,
it's incredible.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
He almost is. He is a throwback villain. Like, I feel like we're in an age now where we've got the sympathetic villain, where it's like, oh, they must have this backstory where there must have been something that's gone wrong and he's avenging someone. But just Wesker's difficult. He's just a difficult man.
Yeah, he's not damaged. He's just made the choice.
Yeah, exactly. And he's 100% self-aware he's made the choice, which just gives that additional layer of villainy, really. So EdDog83 says, hello, Craig. I was curious if there was, and I'm going to slightly paraphrase this. I was curious if there was any inspiration from actors that you drew from to make your own Wesker. Now, I appreciate you went into this blind, but from when you saw that audition script, what were your inspirations for that going into it?
Well, I mean, until I learned that it was Wesker, I definitely I could tell that he was a villain, but I didn't want to play him like a villain. I wanted to play him like he had a goal, he had a mission, and he thought he was right, basically. So I was going for someone with justifiable, which I mean, when you get scripts that are only parts of a bigger thing, you have to fill in the blanks, right? You have to make choices and guesses about what's happening. So yeah, it didn't say that he thought he was right on there, but I would make that choice.
I like that answer a lot because there are a lot of cases in Resident Evil where it's simply a matter of trying to do one of two things: to transcend the boundaries of what human bodies can do, be something greater, or to subvert the power structure. And Wesker is always trying to subvert the power structure. He's always someone that is Well, actually, always is an interesting term because with the retcons of the later arc villain in RE5, Wesker is very much someone that is looking to accomplish his goal in the sense that he has this aura of conviction. He believes that he needs to cleanse the slate of humanity and nothing will stop him. You know, if there's a goal, he's going to go get it because he's been indoctrinated. He knows what he wants. And Spencer's worldview essentially is what indoctrinated him, and now he's got that vision, and he's unstoppable. So it's I love his motives; they're incredible.
Mm-hmm. I have nothing to add to that.
I'm telling you, Beggy in her analysis,
this is what I mean. Like people, it's really cool to meet people like you guys who just love this thing so much and like understand it. It's great to meet you guys.
Yeah, no, but and again, we appreciate this is actually one of the first interviews you're delivering to a creator, so we appreciate you you're giving us your time today. You know, you're obviously very limited on what you've shot so far of Wesker, and I like what I've seen so far of your interpretation of Wesker. It's going to be very hard to frame this question, but where would you hope? Oh man, we can't really say that.
Yeah, it's a really difficult thing to do. It's a big franchise.
Yeah.
There are tons of NDAs, so I wish there was more that I could talk about, but I just it's a thing that people have to be really careful with. When you work on a movie that's a one-off and then it's out and it's done. When that happens, you can openly talk about things, but this is a game and a company where they're going to be making stuff. People are going to be speculating, and who knows if I know more than I can say or if I don't. But even just asking the question is something that you got to be careful with, which is one of the fun aspects of getting to work on these things, right?
And that was the perfect answer to that question. So
yeah.
Yeah, so we've covered. There's a lot of questions about how the inspiration behind the character, which you've really addressed. Getting into there was a really good question about specifically getting into voice acting. Where is it here? Let me make sure I've got inspiration.
I can talk a little to that because getting into voice acting is really tough. Especially, and it's not really getting easier because it's now so much simpler for people to do stuff at home that there's so many people that are doing it now. I've been a union actor for many years, so there are projects that will be union that not everybody can see, but there's so many non-union actors doing stuff, and there's projects all over the world going on. So when I first started, I had recording experience with singing, so I was comfortable in recording rooms. So my first few auditions going into audition for voice acting, I already had a level of confidence on there that people that didn't have that experience wouldn't have. But breaking into animation is incredibly tough. I've done a couple cartoons, but like even getting auditions for them is really tough because there's so many people doing character animations. The Jeep thing was a big deal too, because I had no idea that they were auditioning New York, LA, Vancouver, and Toronto. And when I thought I just booked one commercial. And when I got in there were a lot of people in the room, which was strange. And the guy explained to me that they had done this huge search. I was like, wow, like there's a level of luck involved in this business that you just have to kind of be okay with. There's talent, there's luck, there's experience, but all of those things have to be in the right place sometimes. Yeah.
It's not actually too dissimilar to being like a creator. Yes, you have to have that motivation, that reliability of producing consistent content, but it's always that key variable everyone forgets is luck.
Yep.
Like you could
like
still do all of them things.
I won't name names, but I was in acting school and people became world famous right next to me. Like I saw how that can happen, and it can happen just like that. So having that hope of, some people are like, aren't you jealous? No. If seeing that kind of success happen to someone next to you gives you hope that you can be like, oh, and then when you meet people like Nick who are successful and are wonderful people, you're like, oh, okay, there's something right and good about this industry.
100%. Yeah, he's a wholesome fella. Agent Veronica coming in with the 4-month Rose Squad resubscription. Thank you very much for that. Are you three excited for the RE Death Island movie? So we'll start off with that. Have you seen the run up to Death Island, and what are your ambitions for that?
I watched the first half of you. I try not to get spoiled by stuff, so I'll be excited to hear about something. But then when especially with Marvel movies, when they start putting out like 18 different trailers in the week before it comes out, so yes, I'm excited about it. I don't know what to expect. I don't know if it's going to be campy. I don't know if it's going to be fun, but it's going to be really cool to see all those characters together at the same time.
Yeah.
So yes, looking forward to it and trying not to watch all the trailers.
Of course. If we extend the scope of that question to, we've spoken about all different types of media, how they translate over. Obviously, we know Resident Evil has a history of crossovers into films, into TV shows. What are your thoughts on the Resident Evil movies in all carnations, and then we'll move on to the series?
They're different than the games.
Yeah.
I enjoy them for different reasons than the games. They're not the same kind of translation from source material that something like The Last of Us is, but I think that's because these games are a different animal. I don't know. I enjoyed them. It's a loaded question because you never want to say you don't like something.
Yeah, of course.
Especially when you're working on something. But yeah, I've seen every Resident Evil thing. I have not played 6 yet because it came out at a time when I wasn't playing games, but that's fine. I will play it. I bought it. It's on my PlayStation. But I've seen every movie, most of them in the theaters. I've seen every animated show. Yeah, I'm a fan too.
That's awesome.
Yeah, they are their own thing, aren't they? Really, as you quite rightly have put, they're in there.
I even liked watching the new Netflix show, and I know that there was a lot of discussion about that. But such a huge Lance Reddick fan.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Rest in peace.
He's wonderful in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Wesker, of course. Yeah, just clicked, obviously.
It's another Wesker.
Yeah, I suppose you would have known that you was Wesker at the same time that he was playing Wesker. What was that like?
It was a little bit stressful. Yeah, big shoes to fill.
Yeah, 100%. Like you are playing a character that the Lance Reddick is playing.
Yep. Yeah, I'm such a huge fan of his work in the Horizon series, and his stupid skits on things like Eric Andre and Toys Are Me, that skit that he had on YouTube years ago. Such a great actor.
And you said briefly you've been, obviously you see Nick Apostolidis streaming. Obviously you did a stream with Nick. What's that like from your point of view, in terms of like seeing voice actors also now moving into creating content?
It's really neat because it's kind of a different world, because it used to be that you want to have like a shield and in front of the actor life and the personal life, like to have a little bit of mystique. But I think that Nick does something similar to what Seth Meyers does. And Seth Meyers is my favorite late night show because he's not afraid to mess up a joke and then be honest that he messed it up, and then make that the most worthwhile with, like, he's so honest
Mm.
on stage. And when Nick has something go wrong on his streams, it's the same thing. Like, he giggles about it and he fixes it, and he's honest about it. He doesn't try to cover up his mistakes. But yeah, it's I mean, I think it also goes back to how the fact that I used to be hiding the fact that I played video games, and now there's an aspect of it where it's like, it doesn't have to be a secret anymore, which is really cool.
In fact, there's even some charm and some added allure when someone is new to the creator world or the gaming world, and they're trying to find out technology for the
Yeah.
first time, technical
And
difficulties.
he's got great people helping him too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there is, I mean, it's almost deceiving, really, isn't it? How, you know, you just click on someone's stream and it's all there, all pretty. It looks very simplistic and straightforward to set up. As you know, with doing shows and bits and pieces, the finished product looks so like simplistic, beautiful, but actually behind the scenes, it's absolute either technological masterpiece or a spaghetti junction.
It's a lot of work. There's a big learning curve too. So I mean, I didn't know what to expect coming on to see it from this side. But you guys have set this up in a way that it makes it really easy for someone to jump in and be a part of it. So
yeah. I mean, from our point of view, if we make your life easier, makes it easier for you to come on.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I mean, from your point of view, is there any intention to make a crossover into creating content?
I've been thinking about it, and people have been talking to me, and I've bought a capture card. So I have not started doing it yet, but clearly I'm leaning in that direction. Yeah, I mean, like, I remember I played World of Warcraft as a single player game. Like, I did not communicate with people like they were real people. I was playing this game that other people happened to be playing with, but it wasn't until someone else that I was playing it with started asking me questions about, like, who's this person you play with? Are they a couple? And I was like, oh, right. These are all real people playing it. And that kind of opened my eyes to the gaming community in a much different way. So that person kind of opened my eyes and made me a bigger gamer, actually.
I think what would be cool, you say that you haven't had a chance to play Outbreak.
No, and is there a way to play that on PS5, or do you need like an emulator or something? I wouldn't be doing that. I might have to just find a couple of playthroughs on YouTube or something.
Because what they've recently done, sort of in the last couple of years, Outbreak obviously launched with online support back in the days, and fans have actually brought their own private servers online. So it's now possible to play Resident Evil Outbreak with your friends like it's 2003.
Well, I only play games legally.
It's still legal.
That's all I'll say about that.
Of course. Yeah, I suppose if you were talking briefly off air about Alison Court, and I don't think we've had a chance to speak about that on stream.
I haven't spoken to her in a little while, but she was. I mean, so I first knew her because I saw her as a clown on the show called The Big Comfy Couch, which is a Canadian show. And so when I didn't realize that she played Claire in the games until I met her as a director. And she's a lovely woman. She is so fun. And because we both live in Toronto, so I would run into her for years and years after that. And when I was casting and directing a game, she was the first person that I called to come in. So I had her come in and work on the game that I was working on for quite some time. I hope I get to work with her again. I haven't seen her since the pandemic. We used to both live in the same neighborhood, but I moved during the pandemic, and I believe she did as well. So hopefully I can reconnect with her soon.
Yeah, I mean, long-standing member of the Resident Evil community, iconic role as, of course, Claire Redfield Yeah, it would be good to definitely see a reconnect 100%. Is there any message you want to give the Resident Evil fans? You've got the platform right here to do so. Is there anything you want to a message you want to put out there?
I would say that it's nice to get to talk to you guys, because I don't think people know that I'm a big gamer as well. So I've been watching this community for a lot longer than I've been a part of it. So yeah, it's nice to get to talk to everybody.
Indeed. Well, as I said, we've really appreciated you coming on for the hour, spending a bit of time with us, giving us a small look into what is I'm sure going to be a pivotal role moving forward for yourself. Is there any projects that you can talk about?
Yeah,
that you want to.
So last August, I did motion capture for the first time for a TV show. So I played, and it's another thing where it was under NDA. I didn't know what show it was. I didn't know what character was. It was fake names, but I did know he was an 11-foot demon. And so I played this character, and we did the motion capture at Ubisoft Studios. But I played Trigon in the final episode of Titans, which came out, I guess, about a month ago. So that was another secret that I had to keep. I'm in. My voice is in the trailer for a huge franchise, a game that is coming out. I'm gonna just be a little bit vague about that. My voice is in a big trailer that just came out, and I've also done recording for 3 other video games this year that are not announced yet.
So did any of your sort of metal voice carry over into that demonic role? Do you ever mean to do the yelling?
Yeah, and actually the really cool thing is now that the technology is advanced in a way that you can see, they'll have a screen up there where there'll be a real time of what your character looks like. So I think that my demon just stands like this, but then I look at the screen, I'm like, oh no, he's got to be down like this. Now the character works. So you get to actually see what the finished project is almost going to look like while you're doing it, which is really, really cool.
And that's just your idle stance? It's kind of like hunched over, and it's like...
Yeah, and I mean, it's TV, so it's not like video games. Like I would have an idle stance, but I like every shot, you could see how every shot was going to be.
Right.
And you can see finished sets too. If they've got the assets finished, then you're not just looking at a void with your character standing in it. Like you can, I saw Wesker in front of his computer while I was doing it.
Okay.
Which is really, really, it's so helpful, because when I was doing Resident Evil Outbreak, who knows what it's going to look like at the end. I don't know how tall the building is next to me. It's all imagination. I was doing some crazy stunt work on that one too. I actually got, I fell out of a car in one thing. I got shot in the face while running. I did a lot of stunts. I probably could have hurt myself.
So a busy and important man moving forward, in summary.
Yeah. Knock on wood. Let's, yeah.
That's a wild...
going pretty good well right now.
I was gonna say that's just a wild resume. So you played this supervillain, you played a demon, you played goons and cops, you played like I think bartenders. I saw in your from what I could gather from your reel.
Yeah, I just did two bouncers. I played. I was in the first 3 episodes of C with Jason Momoa on Apple TV, and in that show, I got to light a guy on fire. I got slammed into prison bars, and then I got hung. So that was that was a fun shoot too.
You're always in these very violent situations.
yeah. I don't. When I was younger, I got to play a lot of like lead romantic roles. I don't do that anymore.
Oh, okay.
It's a lot of violent stuff usually.
Because I was reading that you had you had kind of observed and been inspired by Midsummer Night's Dream, and taken part in some early theater that way?
Yeah, I am still friends with my drama teacher from high school,
Wow.
and one of the first things that I saw was he directed Midsummer Night's Dream, and I saw a bunch of the guys that I knew from playing in bands because it was high school in the 90s. Everybody had 4 bands. So I saw a couple of my friends on stage in a play, and that was when I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to do that. So yeah, Mark is my high school teacher, and I'm still in contact with him. And when I was in Hair at the big theater in Toronto in 2006, and he was the guy that was 3 or 4 times I would come at the stage door, and there he was. So he's always been a really good supporter.
Wow. Did you have that desire before, like, theater? Do you have, like, that urge looking at actors in films and television, like, "I can be that guy," you know?
I wanted to be a singer first. So
Okay.
that was, I wanted to be in bands, and it wasn't until I was in high school and I was like, oh no, I don't just want to be a singer. I want to be a performer.
And now
Like
you're both.
musicals, acting, singing. I don't really care which one it is as long as
Okay.
I'm doing one of them.
That's
Well,
really dope.
at least it keeps you busy. I mean,
Yeah.
if one of them, has a little bit of dries up a little bit, you can always jump into something else. So,
Mhm.
ended up paying dividends a little bit, making those choices.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I've always got something to fall back on, which is not the backup that my parents would have wanted me to have when I was growing up.
So where can we find you on social media these days?
Instagram at Craig Burnett. This is interesting. So I'm on Twitter at Craig Burnett. I never used my Twitter account ever, but when I finished working on Resident Evil remake in Vancouver, I picked it up and I just posted a tweet that said, if you found me, I probably just finished what you're looking for me up for. So that was like the last tweet I made, and a bunch of people found it as soon as the game came out, and they're like, "Oh my god, is that you? Is that you?" So Instagram at Craig Burnett, Twitter at Craig Burnett, and my website is craigburnatowski.com.
I think I just read that tweet earlier, and I was like, "Yes, this is what I'm looking for you for."
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think I pinned it to the top of my account. I can't remember. Yeah.
Well, we again really appreciate you making time for us today.
Thank you.
If you ever wanted assistance or anything like that, you wanted to do a live stream with the Residents of Evil gang, we'll absolutely accommodate you where possible, and
Cool.
provide any tech help or anything like that. So door is always open, my friend.
All right, well, let's talk. I'm super busy right now. I've got medieval time shows for the next 4 days, but let's talk.
Yeah, 100%.
That's good.
Indeed. Well, thank you to everyone who's watched this podcast today. It's really, really appreciated you dropping by as always. As ever, Residents of Evil is sponsored by G Fuel. So we've got a 20% off code across the whole store. So if you use code ROE at checkout, you get 20% off. As ever, ROE is supported by these fantastic viewers throughout the stream. So if you want to either jump in on YouTube or over on Patreon, we'd really appreciate if you'd drop us a cheeky membership. We do have exclusive streams. We've been answering a lot of community questions, and that is all funded through our ROE team subscription service. So again, thank you very much, Craig, for making all of this possible. And thank you for everybody watching. I've been Andy. This has been Beggy. This is the Residents of Evil.